had Republican senators.
So were we on
in Southern California.
Allegiant nonstop. I told you. I'm playing nonstop to Seattle and nonstop back from Los Angeles.
Poor Seattle, from like fires to floods, like the Northwest.
Catch a break. Well, good evening, everybody.
Howdy.
John Hayden back from Michigan, and Brown with us, and David
Happy
Hopkins.
to be back at the table.
Chris Caputo, Commissioner Caputo with us.
Excited to be joining you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Senator.
Did you know you're a commissioner of the gayest place on planet Earth? Have you heard that before?
This I've heard, and that makes me happy.
I feel
And
like
life
his
is just
living
better
makes
in
him
Wilton
gay space
Manor.
on
I'm
Earth.
getting ready to go to West Hollywood for the holidays, and I'm gonna bring the Wilton Manors message. Y'all aren't so gay. Let me tell you about this place called Wilton. Well, we're going to begin tonight by querying up breaking news. Hotspots magazine and Happening Out television network celebrates the 36th anniversary with a historic announcement of a new broadcast channel in Roku. Hotspots magazine is one of America's oldest LGBTQ plus publications. Happening Out has created historic social media streaming of shows like this, Queer News Tonight. It's Happening Out, the world's most popular live LGBTQ plus talk show, entertainment shows, trans shows, lesbian programs, and more. But today, the news about moving to broadcast television was historic for the LGBTQ plus community. Florida's largest LGBTQ plus media network will celebrate their 36th anniversary here at Sunshine Cathedral and the Happening Out television studios on Wednesday from 7 to 10 p.m. with open bar, food, and live entertainment. The community is invited. Here was the live breaking news announcement yesterday. Watch this. This is breaking news from Queer News Tonight. I'm Al Ferguson, an anchor at Happening Out Television Network. Today, Hotspots magazine and Happening Out Television Network made a significant announcement.
I'm your girl, Faye What? Host of Happening Out Television Network's new LGBTQ plus morning news show, The Faye What Show. This media group includes Hotspots magazine, and as one of America's oldest LGBTQ plus publications, Hotspots is celebrating 36 years of the LGBTQ plus experience. Happening Out Television Network has pioneered live digital streaming access on YouTube, Facebook, and other popular social media networks.
I'm Tony Lima, anchor of Happening Out Television Network's weekly transgender news and talk show, hosted by members of the trans community called Translation. Together, Hotspots and Happening Out Television Network make up the largest LGBTQ plus media network in Florida. Even with this success, we heard you. We've been witnessing the slow death of the plugged-in cable TV industry for a few years now, and streaming television services are fast overtaking them as the go-to alternative for entertainment and news providers.
I'm Kitty Meow, host of the entertainment show at Happening Out Television Network called The Kitty Meow Show. As we continue to commit to social media broadcast platforms, we have spent the better part of 2021 to prepare for the next evolution for LGBTQ plus media. This is the breaking news.
We broadcast Sunshine Cathedral's Sunday religious service to the largest LGBTQ plus audience in the world. All of these shows and more to come in 2022 is why we are pleased to announce that Happening Out Television Network will become the first LGBTQ plus multi-program channel added to Android TV, Google TV, and popular Apple TV, where you'll only need to use your voice and ask Siri to bring you to Queer News Tonight.
But even more important is our breaking news announcement on the new partnership with Roku. Roku is America's #1 streaming device for in-home television broadcast viewing. Currently, more than 55 million homes use Roku every day, and 1 in 3 new smart TVs sold in the U.S. come with Roku operating systems built right in for in-home TV use.
This is how those of you that have 85-inch TVs watch your entertainment and news. Every time someone searches anything on LGBTQ+, regardless where in the English-speaking world you are, search results at Roku will bring up Happening Out Television Network and Hotspots programming on the network.
This means all of our programs will be scheduled and broadcast live and then in repeat throughout the week on the new broadcast television channel.
The news is important for the entire LGBTQ plus community because it is going to give our pride parades, our LGBTQ plus nonprofits, our LGBTQ plus events, and our LGBTQ plus businesses its first ever access to broadcast television. It's going to be an exciting 2022. Well, this is amazing news.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Very
That's
exciting,
really
yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. Roku, Apple, Android. Where do you watch your stuff? Do you watch in cable? I'm curious.
No, so I'm all of those different
Cable.
streaming services, right? From depending on if I'm on my TV, which is not 85 inches, or what device I'm on, right?
Not a size queen.
I
Tony's
didn't
the
say
size
that.
queen.
Yeah.
The 85 inches.
I do Google TV myself, and it's super exciting. And one of my favorite things about this is I've been part of this team since we were a companion app for OutClick magazine, trying to bring people pictures of events and videos that users could upload. And then we morphed into this digital TV. So now to become this huge new network where we're going to be our own television network is so amazing. I'm so proud to be part of this, and I have goosebumps.
And it's going to be great that we are just going to be able to much easier be in the homes of people who need this content, who may just stumble upon it and be like, where has this been in my life? Much like I was, but before I joined it. And more importantly, my mom can now watch me easier.
Yes,
Right.
You know, I'm blown away by the diversity of the content that's going to come right out of the gate. I think it really is going to showcase our entire community. And then selfishly, I am so excited to have like the Stonewall Parade from Wilton Manors or Wicked Manors to have that live on this network. I mean, that is really the future, and it's amazing what you've done here.
Absolutely the future. And the great point there, Chris, is content is king. And the reason content is important is you can't take it to the next step in terms of changing the hearts and minds of people without providing the access to the information. And so often people don't want to consume in their phone, or they might not want to consume in their iPad. They want to sit on their sofa and watch in a television. They've got an 85-inch television or whatever the size is that they're pursuing, and they want to watch there. I know that's been my situation over and over again, and convenience is super important here. The most important thing that I think is exciting on the news is search. Roku's partnership is to support a first ever LGBTQ platform, and Roku is going to help support that in search, which means if you say something about Stonewall, or you say something about LGBTQ, or you say something about trans, you're coming automatically in search results that are going to direct you to programming on the channel at Happening Out Television Network. And then that reaches out to be able to say, oh, there's a parade that they are broadcasting, or there is an event like Wicked Manors. Wait, where is Wilton Manors? And you're sitting in Lincoln, Nebraska. It's very exciting of what this is going to
I think like one of the biggest deals is when you're doing that search, right, you're going to land on programming that's produced by our community for our community, as opposed to just a traditional news source, which may focus on a soundbite rather than the story, the level of detail that we really get to hear.
That's a terrific point. All right, very exciting news. We hope you come to the 36th anniversary celebration on Wednesday. Well, welcome to Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only LGBTQ plus daily evening news. It's time to queer up the news. It is 8 p.m. Tuesday, December 7th, 2021, and we are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. And might I add, on this new announcement at Roku and Apple, etc., we're thinking about changing it of out of the headlines and into your living room. That's, I think, a funny change. We are going to tell our most important stories this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
Well, thank you for joining Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ evening news show. Whatever happens, you'll see it. Queer News Tonight is supported by viewers like you. We're part of the partnership between Happening Out Television Network and Hotspots magazine. Hotspots is celebrating 36 years of the LGBTQ+ experience. We bring you the best of LGBTQ+ news, entertainment, and support of our community.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson, and let's welcome first up anchor David Hopkins. David is well known in the South Florida community for his charity work in the leather community and is an officer for the Lambda Men's Brotherhood. LMB has helped raise over $250,000 for at-need nonprofits in the community. He's also part of the production team here at the Happening Out Television Network, helping to bring your favorite shows to life. Good evening, David.
Hey, good evening, everybody. And pandemic has hurt a lot of nonprofits, so please get out there in community, help out, donate when you can. Let's also welcome Wilton Manors City Commissioner Chris Caputo. As a longtime Wilton Manors resident and business owner, Chris has been quoted as saying, quote, "I know firsthand life is just better here, and I'm humbled to serve our community," end quote. Chris is also the founder of Development Partners, a local business providing digital marketing services to other small businesses, focusing on data-directed technology-based marketing strategies. Chris also serves on the Greater Fort Lauderdale Chamber of Commerce as membership chair and as a member of the executive board since 2020. And lastly, Chris is a board member of the Wilton Manors Business Association as well as Plays of Wilton Manors. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks. I'm so excited to be here for my first time. And let me start by welcoming Cindy Brown. She's an icon in the LGBTQ+ community. She was an early organizer of Miami AIDS Walk, the White Party for Care Resources, and other major events. She served as the executive director of Miami-Dade Gay and Lesbian Chamber Foundation and LGBTQ Visitor Center. She's also the founding executive director of Miami Beach Pride and currently serves as the program manager for Jewish Community Services LGBTQ Lambda Living Program for LGBT seniors. Good evening, Cindy.
Good evening. Thanks for that warm introduction, Commissioner Caputo. And now let's welcome John Hayden, a reporter for South Florida Gay News covering politics, arts, and philanthropic organizations. John has been a journalist for 26 years, much of it covering the stupidity and scandals of Hollywood. He's interviewed nearly every big name in TV, movies, music, and considers the time he spent with Cher as the best 4 minutes of his life.
What is he
Good
talking
evening,
about?
John.
I have no idea. We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ+ community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast. Here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Tuesday, December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day.
Well, let's begin by queering up South Florida. Florida and Governor DeSantis removes LGBTQ+ inclusive anti-bullying information from the state website. Florida's Department of Education has removed LGBTQ+ inclusive anti-bullying resources from its website. The Florida Capital Star, a right-wing publication, had raised questions about the inclusion of the resources, and last week the DOE took down the information pending review from the portal for the DOE's Office of Safe Schools. The Capital Star appeared to be shocked that the portal included links to LGBTQ+ groups such as GLSEN, which supports LGBTQ+ students and educators. The publication described GLSEN as, quote, part of a $1 billion network that funds LGBTQ+ groups, and these groups are focused on initiatives that promote gender identity and transgenderism, interesting word, by training leaders in political activism, end quote. The Capital Star also objected to the site having a link to stopbullying.gov, a federal government website that discusses bullying of all types, including anti-LGBTQ+ bullying, and how to end it. Statewide LGBTQ+ rights group Equality Florida denounced the removal of the LGBTQ+ resources, calling it yet another homophobic and transphobic action from the administration of Republican Governor Ron DeSantis. Equality Florida's executive director Nadine Smith said, quote, attacks on LGBTQ+ students from Tallahassee are fueling a toxic, dangerous environment on the ground. from the passage of explicitly anti-transgender legislation this year to proposed legislation that would jail doctors and parents for providing life-saving medical care to transgender children. A politically motivated assault on the LGBTQ plus community is putting young people at risk. Vulnerable youth deserve better than a DeSantis administration intent on putting them in harm's way in order to score cheap political points. End quote.
This makes me so sad. I mean, don't you want all of students safe in schools?
I mean, any resource that's anti-bullying for any reason, to me, is a good resource. It sort of sounds like Capital Stars being a bully here. Like,
Well,
Absolutely.
this is predatory behavior from the right wing. They are using children as tools and pawns. They don't care about their well-being. They're just, using them for as Nadine said, cheap political points, and it's disgusting.
I didn't have these types of resources available to me when I was a kid.
Right.
And this administration is making sure that today's generation doesn't either. It's terrible. It's going to be left for, I'm sure they won't be protesting when homophobic coaches and teachers are spouting their hate. And unfortunately, as we're going to learn in an upcoming story, silence kills.
Absolutely.
I had a question to the significance of the story. Of course, we have a common voice in terms of the support of anti-bullying programs and how the state should be involved in it. Why are we not hearing much in the LGBTQ community on this story? Of course, we have Nadine Smith's voice, but broadly, why are we just not, our Facebook feeds are not full of this story? Why is that?
No, there's so much. I have a theory, is that they're attacking us on all these different fronts, and if they've got us fighting, this little fire here and putting out this little fire here.
Right.
There's that. We're ignoring the broader wildfire that's burning just over the mountain.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a solid plan, an attack on every front, and you're going to divide people's attention. Frankly, it's easier as a community when we're all fighting marriage equality. We're all united behind one thing. When there's a million different front lines,
Right.
it's really difficult to stay up in the war.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Your experience, city commissioner here in the gayest place on planet Earth, any recommendations of what you think our community should do, what Wilton Manor should do in responding to what Department of Education is doing?
I think it's really important that we exert, locally, sort of that home rule and decide in our county what are the anti-bullying resources we want to promote, and sometimes that means standing up against what the State Department of Education wants to do. But this is a place we can and should take a stand, for what we stand for.
I also think that organizations like GLSEN and Safe Schools need to be putting this information out, because this is the first time I'm hearing of this, and it's horrible.
And you also get the misinformation campaigns from the right, and you get the people who are like, oh, well, you guys didn't have it, and you grew up fine. I did not grow up fine. I tried to kill myself as a teenager. It was not a good time for me. If I'd had these resources, that would have made my life so much easier and happier before I came to terms with myself.
Right.
Well, we have to pay attention to this story. And Chris, you're going to keep us in the education front.
Yeah, let's continue to queer up education. 7th grader commits suicide after classmates say he is going to hell for being gay. Watch this.
He was peaceful. He was a peaceful soul.
At just 12 years old, Eli Fritchley wasn't afraid to be himself.
He didn't care, or we thought he didn't care. And that's what's really difficult for us, is because we thought he didn't care.
He played in the marching band, painted his nails, loved the color pink, and wore the same SpongeBob sweatshirt nearly every day.
I think that a part of it is probably because he was in the same clothes every single day, that they used that as maybe a weapon.
Eli was one of a kind, and that was often not accepted by his peers.
He was told, because he didn't necessarily have a religion, and he said he was gay, that he was going to go to hell. He told him that quite often.
His parents heard his cries, but didn't realize the weight he carried in his heart.
It was really abusive. I don't think it was ever physical. I think it was just words, but words hurt.
Eli never blamed anyone, they said, instead shining compassion and innocence from his gentle soul.
This has just blindsided us. This is something that we would never, ever have expected.
His mother made the tragic discovery Sunday night in his bedroom.
It's been really hard. That image was terrible until we got to hold him yesterday. And now now that image is gone, because the only word that we could think of yesterday when we were kissing and loving on him was how angelic he looked. And he absolutely looks angelic. He's just an angel.
An angel, she says, that was loved more than he realized, yet failed by everyone in his circle.
We all failed him. We all failed him. It's simple as that.
Now they have a new mission, pleading to stop bullying, with hopes that no other child or parent goes through their same heartache.
I honestly think that education for everyone where bullying is concerned, because this is it is a problem, not just in Bedford County, it's a problem everywhere.
This is truly tragic. A 7th grader in Bedford County, Tennessee, died by suicide last week after he was ruthlessly bullied for being gay. The parents of 12-year-old Eli Fritchley say his peers repeatedly told him he was going to hell because of his sexuality. Eli's mom told WHNT News students mocked Eli for the way he dressed. He loved pink, painted his nails, and wore the same SpongeBob sweatshirt almost daily. Eli's dad, Steve, said he doesn't think the students ever physically abused Eli, but that verbal abuse can be just as harmful. Quote, "I think it was just words, but words hurt. They really hurt." End quote. Steve and Debbie are now working on launching an anti-bullying foundation in Eli's honor. The Fritchleys hope to prevent what happened to Eli from happening to other kids and families. Eli's mother said, quote, "We all failed him. We all failed him. It's as simple as that." End quote.
This literally breaks my heart and boils my blood with the story that we had right before it.
I don't know how the people that are involved in like what Capital Star is doing, how they don't see the direct correlation. This is somebody's life, and if life is paramount in their beliefs, how do you not see how their actions are causing someone their life?
Because the GOP is not...
You're drawing the comparison to the zealot nature of abortion rights in terms of protecting life, but once this situation occurs, they are not as aggressively protecting life. That's your point there.
That's what, I think they care about life until it's born, and then they don't care for how it's taken care of. And that's
life begins at conception but ends at birth.
Right.
But,
sadly, that's I think how they proceed.
Yeah, good luck once you exit the womb.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact is they are not a pro-life party. This child is not going to hell. This child was living in hell. When he took his own life. That's why we need those resources that were up there. The GOP does not give a damn about anybody's life. I was just up in Michigan. There is no child that can be shot in school. There is no child that can take their own life that they will give a rat's ass about if it goes against their own personal political opinions. And God help that family and that kid.
Yeah.
I think it also shows, by the way, the need for us to educate parents on what to look for. Because here we saw that the parents, they saw there were signs, but they didn't know how to interpret how serious those signs were, how to ask the right questions. So I think there's an opportunity for us to really talk more to parents who may not know how to deal with this.
Well, now they can't even search the Department of Education's website in Florida to find resources for their children. And it's...
You know, the shocking thing here is the not shocking thing.
Right.
The shocking thing here is that this is a 12-year-old. It's a 7th grader. A 12-year-old should not be facing the decision of committing suicide. A 7th grader shouldn't be facing the decision to commit suicide. Unfortunately, overwhelmingly, LGBTQ youth, and in this age group, face pressure that we can't that is different if we face discrimination. They're facing a fundamental decision that often leads to this kind of decision making, which is why this is so shockingly disappointing. The second thing is 12-year-olds don't know how to preach the Bible. So to preach you are going to hell is not something a 12-year-old processes. They were taught to say that.
Right.
Who is culpable here are the parents that are teaching their children to hate.
I would add the school administrators who aren't doing their due diligence.
Yeah, it's very depressing, but I also, there's a hope in me, right? Because I think there are school districts in America, there are places where kids of any gender identity, of any sexuality, they feel at home, they feel comfortable and normal, which goes to show that, kids, when raised properly, when left to their own devices, they don't have hate in their heart, right? This isn't the norm. But this is what happens in places where we don't provide the right resources, where we preach hate to our children. Yeah. We lose lives.
Yeah. We humbly, we can say we're doing this story at Queer News tonight because this story is so vitally important. We have learned in the trans community, you say the name Eli Fritchley. Eli Fritchley. There shouldn't be another Eli Fritchley, and that's why we do this story at Queer News tonight.
Well, apparently Al was in a rough mood when he picked headlines today, so now we queer up the USA. New York man charged with mailing gun and bomb threats against LGBTQ+ organizations. Watch this.
This is one of the approximately 12 threatening letters David Kilnick has received over the past 8 years. The head of Long Island's LGBT network says in each letter someone threatened to kill him.
At least for a couple of weeks, I would always look behind me, look left and right to make sure that no one was out there with a gun.
But today prosecutors announced they arrested the man who they think has been responsible for sending the letters. They say they've recovered at Robert Faring's home in Bayport this doctored Newsday cover which says horrible, derogatory things about members of the LGBTQ community. Kilnick says one of the recent letters he received said, "They are out to kill you and your boyfriend. You are being watched. No matter how long it takes, you will be taken out. High-powered bullet, bomb, knife, whatever it takes." Prosecutors say they believe the 74-year-old Faring also sent a letter to the organizers of the 2021 New York City Pride March saying there would be radio-controlled devices placed at numerous strategic places that would, quote, make the 2016 Orlando Pulse nightclub shooting look like a cakewalk. Outside Faring's home hangs an American flag with a purple and black bunting. Prosecutors say they found inside 20 LGBT flags that appear to have been stolen from Sayville over the summer and an envelope addressed to an attorney associated with the LGBTQ community, which contained remains of a dead bird.
I went outside in the morning. It was about 8 o'clock in the morning, and there was a long line of black-light cars.
Neighbors say the FBI was here at the home last month.
I see the FBI guys come out with some bags.
We're glad this is taken care of, but we hope that going forward, that if this letter is received on, hopefully no more letters are received, that people realize you do this, you're going to get caught, you're going to go to jail, and hopefully stay there for the rest of your life.
Prosecutors say that investigators also found in Faring's home 2 loaded shotguns and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. According to the criminal complaint, one of these recent threatening letters was sent to the FBI in Quantico, Virginia for DNA analysis. And according to prosecutors, the DNA on that letter matched Faring's.
A 74-year-old man in Long Island was charged yesterday for allegedly mailing threats to assault, shoot, and bomb members of the LGBTQ+ community and affiliated organizations, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York. Robert Faring is accused of sending at least 60 threatening letters to organizers of pride events and other groups over an 8-year period. In one May 20th letter, he cited in the charging documents, Faring allegedly warned that if the 2021 New York Pride March was held as planned, quote, there will be radio-controlled devices placed at numerous strategic places and firepower aimed at you from other strategic places. This will make the 2016 Orlando Pulse nightclub shooting look like a cakewalk, end quote. In a June 9th letter, he warned an LGBTQ+ organizer that they, quote, better be ready to meet your end, end quote, if they attended an event in East Meadow, New York, adding that it's a great place to unload a high-powered rifle bullet from a distance, the court documents allege. In a letter to the same person on June 25th, he allegedly said he was disappointed he wasn't able to kill him. On November 18th, police conducted a search warrant at Faring's home in Bayport, New York, where they recovered over 100 rounds of ammunition, 2 loaded shotguns, 2 stun guns, and a stamped envelope addressed to an LGBTQ affiliated attorney with the remains of a dead bird.
As a city official, this just must be chilling to you.
So it's scary because just the number of organizations that were affected and how these sort of situations can really spread fear through an entire community, you know, and what's behind that. And I think, you know, when I see this and you read the letters, you know, I've got to wonder what is motivating this person, because you don't actually hear about that. Is this mental illness? Is this religion that's doing it? It's concerning because it can be anybody in any of our cities. any of our neighbors that's doing this sort of thing.
One of the things I found incredibly concerning from this story was that he's been doing it for 8 years. Right. Why did it take 8 years? Or let's say they investigated.
Well, we had 4. 7. There was an interruption of 4 years.
There was, yeah. But why was it not taken seriously in years 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just now they've started to send a DNA analysis and things like that?
I know Al has more to go with this, but there's a local person here in South Florida named Craig Jungworth who has repeatedly threatened acts of violence against the LGBTQ community. And the FBI keeps saying, oh, there's nothing we can do, nothing we can do. He did a brief stint in jail after holding his mother captive in Orlando and not letting her out of the house so she couldn't tell people what he was doing. But they haven't done anything about his threatening to make Memorial Day on Wilton Drive make Pulse look like a day in the park, which was his quote. There's a lot of terrible people, and unfortunately, because it's only the LGBTQ community that's targeted, there's not much people are doing unless there's actual violence committed.
I guess my only observation, or my observation to the story, is that we should be ever vigilant. This washes over all of us in various different ways. I've been involved in 2 events like this here already in 2021. When the Stonewall Pride event took place, I was on the main stage with Kitty Meow and Tony and Faye Watt, and we were going to broadcast the parade in Wilton Manors in Chris's City. And there was a tragic accident, and fortunately it turned out to be a tragic accident, and that is all. But when the event happened, immediately, it was like a virus sweeping through the crowd. This is anti-LGBT terrorism, which is the story that we're reporting on here. Turns out not to be true. But it's interesting to me that the entire experience for the rest of the evening and days on end was the fact that, well, we believe that could be LGBTQ terrorism, and the fact that it ends up not to be, thankfully, is not the issue. The issue is we live in this space of fear, and that's what we learned.
And I want to go back to something you said, particularly about Craig, because I have been on the receiving end of threats from Craig, and I've been the victim in cases with him, and I've had what I thought was the opportunity to sort of, hey, look at this. This to me is a clear threat. But the way the law is written, it's very clear. It's not just a threat, but it has to be something that is clearly actionable, right? And now there's a degree of what is actionable, but man, the law almost makes it easy for someone to sit at home and make insane threats. And as a community, we have to treat every threat like it is going to happen to us, and yet we don't have any ability to really put an end to that. And I think there's a real opportunity for someone to look at revising the law. So if the intention is just to cause menace by making a threat that's not actionable,
and
it should still be
actioned on. Those kind of laws can be passed. You cannot threaten the President of the United States.
Exactly.
The threat is considered
It doesn't have to be actionable.
And if there are never any repercussions, why are they going to stop?
Yeah. And to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, there are enough people that don't broadcast their intentions that are actively working on actionable things. And I don't mean this to say this to sound flip, but if you've got the crazy uncle at Thanksgiving or at Christmas that's spouting stuff off and you think there's something real going on, please follow up. At least call someone, give a heads up, because it's not funny.
Yeah.
It's just not.
It also creates this background noise, like we were talking about the noise sort of like with what people are doing with, say, the bullying or all these different front lines. When we have people that are out there being allowed to be a menace, it really stops our police, our FBI from actually toning in on those that may not be making menacing comments, but are the real threats to our community.
Yeah, and to your point, one last note on this story in New York. We faced this in Fort Lauderdale. On the 20th of November last month, Pride Fort Lauderdale had the parade. On the Wednesday, Thursday, the FBI reported that they were investigating a person in Wilton Manors that had made a credible threat, and they investigated. And the end conclusion of the credible threat was that they had not done enough actionable items for the FBI to step in and do something about it, exactly to the point that you made. But we're sitting there on Wednesday or Thursday as we're going to broadcast Pride Fort Lauderdale on A1A with an FBI investigation of the event. And for all of us behind the scenes in conversation, we're on a stage and an actionable a non-actionable threat has been made. And it is psychological warfare because they are accomplishing exactly what they want to do. This crazy guy of 80 organizational threats is making the same threats over and over again because he knows it works. It scares. You're fearful. I agree with you, Chris. We've really got to review how our laws respond to the threat of violence, which is different than violence.
Right. So now let's queer up trans rights. Hundreds in Minnesota rallied to support a trans student outed in a bitter election. Watch this.
We stand with trans kids.
It's a message that people like 16-year-old Kahea Sloan, a transgender boy, needed to hear.
What kind of spoke to me the most was just, how many people are here, and it feels really good to know how many people in this area care about me.
But all those signs Saturday weren't just for Kahea, and they weren't just because. They were in response to pain experienced by one family for simply having a child who chose to express themselves.
Looking out here, this is amazing. And thank you.
Kelsey Waits is the mother of 8-year-old Kit Waits.
The Kit was willing to let us share this story.
This week, she shared with KARE 11 how her family was bullied online by other parents in the community. Her child publicly outed as transgender. Within days, the community chose to respond with love.
We're here today to stand in solidarity with the Waits family.
And representation.
We're here, we're loud, we're queer, and we have your back.
And to Kit's family.
And to all of our trans kids, especially my trans kid.
This was a sign.
Just know how much I love you.
Of healing together and moving forward. In Hastings, Eva Anderson, KARE 11 News.
Now a little bit of news on the hopeful side. Hundreds of residents in Hastings, Minnesota took to the streets over the weekend to rally in support of LGBT youth after an official's transgender child was publicly outed. They demonstrated in support of the child after concerned parents of Hastings, a Facebook group for conservative parents, publicly outed Kit, an 8-year-old, in the wake of a bitter school board election. The child's mother, Kelsey Waits, was running for re-election to the town school board in November when opponents of her campaign outed her child, who is non-binary and uses gender-neutral pronouns. In light of the rally, Waits said she is proud that the community is denouncing the harassments. Waits said they won't be leaving Minnesota, saying, quote, "If we moved away and didn't say anything, the bullies would have won." What does that teach? That teaches that they can do all of these things and that there are no repercussions and that no one is going to push back against them. And that just makes them bully harder for the next person.
I think the biggest part of the story, this is Minnesota. And kids like Kit and Kahea now see that there are people in the community that actually support them at their young age and what they're going through. And finding support as gay or lesbian is hard enough. As a trans kid, it's rarer than hen's teeth, to use a country saying. But I just loved seeing all those people out there to support them. It's amazing.
And coming from a political family, I'd be willing to bet that Kit one day goes on to make something great of this experience, which otherwise could have been a horrible one.
Right.
It is that community support that's going to make whatever is possible in Kit's life related to this possible. It can't be understated.
And you know what? This is a wretched trope, outing and weaponizing a politician's child's sexuality, but it appears that those days are waning. Not only with this, 3 years ago, I don't remember if you remember the special election in Alabama, where a Democrat Senator Doug Jones won a seat for 2 years, and they outed his kid as gay. And you know what? Alabama said, we're going to elect you anyway, and that's Alabama. So I think hopefully this type of terribleness, this strand of it at least, may be coming to an end.
It's just horrible, but that all of these attacks on the children, and they have no shame, they have no boundaries.
That's the point. Once upon a time, the Obama administration President Obama's children were off limits for everyone, left, right, media, everyone. George Bush's children, George W. Bush's children were off limits. It seems like what we have been through in the last 4 years, all of the rules have changed. So somebody is running for re-election, not even the first election, re-election to the school board, and therefore their 8-year-old becomes cannon fodder, target, to be able to win a school board seat. Where did our empathy and morality stop? Somewhere it stopped, and we have to pay attention.
And I do want to throw in, because I know the YouTube commenters who are going to say something about it. Yes, there were plenty of people on the left who went for Barron Trump, and that was unacceptable then too. Just like it was unacceptable when they went for Chelsea Clinton. Adult children, if you're an adult working in politics, I consider you fair game. But when it's a child, no, it's never fair game, no matter which side.
And remember tonight, we talked about a 12-year-old that commits suicide because they are told by other 12-year-olds they're going to hell, which is taught by their parents. This teaches children, 8-year-old children, wait, trans is bad. And that's why we're outing KIT, because they're bad. And that creates an attitude where other 8-year-olds are going to do the same thing taught by their parents to do it. At some point, we have to set lines and boundaries to say, we cannot step over this line. That's what this town in Minnesota says. We're standing up for this 8-year-old because you stepped across a line that you can't step across.
And I have to believe that children who can see a group that is gathered in hate, that is fueling anger, can evaluate that, and then this group that's showing up with love and support and sort of peace and happiness, I'm convinced that children can see through that. Now, it's going to be a struggle for them to weigh what their parents are telling them versus what they know is right, but it still gives me hope whenever people show up in this way.
Right. That is our queer headlines for today. So let's catch up on the LGBTQ plus news surrounding COVID-19 with our special segment called Quarantine Quickies.
Queer News Tonight has reported on coronavirus on every broadcast, well, at least every week, since January 6, 2020. Tonight we report that as of today, more than 3,514,000 LGBTQ plus Americans have contracted COVID-19.
Queer News Tonight remembers the more than 56,000 LGBTQ plus Americans that have died from coronavirus.
But the news is improving because as of today, more than 471 million vaccination doses have been administered in the U.S.
Next up, welcome to Queer News Tonight's Q&A on LGBTQ plus health and pandemic. Since February of 2020, this segment has been unique in America, answering your LGBTQ plus community questions about our unique health needs. We are proud to have Queer News Tonight anchor Dr. Howard Grossman.
He's an American pioneer in HIV/AIDS medical treatment and was the executive director of the American Academy of HIV Medicine. He's a nationally recognized medical expert and a proud member of our LGBTQ plus community.
Well, good evening, Dr. Grossman. And before we move into questions, what are your thoughts over this week's health news for our community? And Howard, we can't hear you.
Yeah, Tony's on mute.
I believe you're on mute, Dr. Grossman.
I'm getting nothing from him.
No, not yet. And I'll tell you as we hear you.
Okay. I'm still getting nothing from him. I could hear Punch earlier, but I can't hear now.
Yeah, when we're, of course, as we told you, we are live, so we're, you get to see everything, and we're continuing to work on the sound. I'm suggesting to production, why don't we move on into Flash, and we'll come back to Howard as soon as our sound problem is corrected?
Okay.
All right, that's what we're going to do. We'll return to our Q&A on LGBTQ health and pandemic.
Hi.
Yay.
Technology. I'm sorry. So I was so good to see you all after a few weeks away.
Yeah, that's right. So I was asking you, Dr. Grossman. Sorry, I'm glad we got that figured out. You want to what you've seen this week in terms of?
Well, Al, the big news I think the last couple of weeks has been this new variant, this Omicron variant, and I know you have It's about that we're going to talk about. But I think, that's clearly been our biggest news. I think, all the things you covered tonight impact on LGBTQ health in a big way. The fact that we continue to be bullied and threatened and things like that, really do, have a huge impact on how we go about our lives.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's, and by the way, I'm loving that snappy bow tie. Let's jump right into...
14 degrees out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're going to talk about the weather before we end, I'm sure. Let's jump right into tonight's questions.
Hi, Dr. Grossman. With all of the new variants, which vaccine is the best one?
I don't think, Cindy, that there is any particular vaccine that's better than another. I think clearly the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines have been superior to the Johnson & Johnson, at least the single-dose Johnson & Johnson. But, it seems that what the authorities are saying right now is that the vaccines with the booster will work for against the Omicron virus.
Oh, you're hearing that news. I haven't heard much about that yet. You're hearing the there are about 50 mutations in the virus and about 30 in the spike protein that is the target for most of the vaccine antibodies. But the feeling is that especially when you boost it with the third booster, what it does to your immune system, ramping up your immune system, will overcome a lot of the other problems, and certainly better than not having the vaccine. Yeah, boy, that's very good news. And John, you're up next.
Well, I was looking at the vaccination map, and I started to notice that it's starting to look a lot like election maps and sort of politicizing the pandemic. What will be the long-term effects of this?
Well, that was certainly an interesting thing this week that the news was reporting, that the counties that went heavily for Donald Trump are showing much higher COVID rates of COVID, both infection and death. In fact, I think a factor of 3 to 5 difference. So I mean, what the Republicans are doing by undercutting the drive for vaccination is to kill off their own base, which makes no sense to me. But clearly, as we're seeing growing calls for people to have vaccine cards before they get into restaurants and movie theaters and gyms and things like that, not just mask mandates, but vaccine mandates, I think we're going to see some real separation between those places, and a lot of it just has to do with politics. It's sad. It's very sad.
So I understand that Israel is already looking into a 4th vaccine shot for residents. Do you think these boosters are going to be an ongoing long-term solution?
Well, I think COVID is the canary in the coal mine, so to speak. People have been talking for years that because of the interconnectedness of the world now, that these kind of pandemics can spread. And I think we're going to need a series of vaccines. I think truthfully, the key to coronavirus is going to be to find a part of the virus that is very conserved from one subtype to another and target that. That's really going to be the key, so that you have a vaccine that covers all the mutations and all the variants of the virus. Hopefully they're going, rather than a 4th booster, they'll come up with more targeted vaccines. It would make sense, and vaccines that work across the board. That seems to be what a lot of companies are working on. But I truthfully, I think these pandemics are going to come one after the other in the future, and we really need to prepare to educate people so that they do take vaccines, they do take preventive measures, so that we don't continue to end up in these situations.
Howard, pull out your crystal ball for me. Can you imagine 6 months from now you getting a second booster shot? Yeah, I know you've got your booster. Can you see yourself having another booster shot 6 months from now?
I think if my antibody levels were to wane, that would definitely be in the cards.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that we really haven't been following people's antibody levels, and now we're talking about not the antibodies we used to follow at the beginning of the pandemic, but the antibodies to the spike protein specifically. And that's a different test you can get from the laboratories, but it's a different test than the ones we were doing at the beginning of the pandemic. Those are the antibodies that are important and it can be measured. And I think if we start to see people's antibody levels dropping, then yes, another booster is going to be called for.
And related to that question, when we're talking to LGBTQ community, and you know overwhelmingly we're in the 90 percentile of embracement. This week, by the way, we crossed 60%. Let me ask that question broadly. Can you imagine we're almost at a year since vaccines have been distributed? Could you have imagined on December 7th, 2020, that on December 7th, 2021, with 3 vaccines, we'd only have 60% vaccination rate? Could you have even imagined that?
No, I don't think we possibly could have, and we couldn't. I don't think we could have. Although the writing was on the wall, because health concerns have been politicized for the last, the last decade. I mean, you had people talking about death panels with Medicare because they wanted to have Medicare pay for end of life discussions with people. So that people could plan for end-of-life issues when they were terminally ill. And you had Sarah Palin running around talking about death panels. I mean, we saw this politicization of healthcare. And, just look in Florida at your health commissioner, who's a complete idiot, who's anti-vaccine, who doesn't know, I don't know if he, I don't know where he got his medical degree from, but he really should be, his license should be yanked.
Hey, Sears and Roebuck has great products.
Sorry?
Sears has a great medical school, David was suggesting.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a mail order thing somewhere. Yeah. But, I mean, it's really incredible that these are the people whose voices get lifted up.
One quick last question related to this issue of Israel and the 4th vaccine. I ask you, would you be willing to get the second booster shot, which means you would have had 4. You had Moderna or Pfizer, I've forgotten.
No, Pfizer.
Yeah, you had Pfizer.
But it really doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, right? And I have Moderna. We're hearing after a year virtually nothing in terms of all of these side effects. Apparently, we're finding out that that Facebook has not injected tracking devices in the vaccine, and we've finally been able to prove, or Bill Gates doing, or whatever, blah blah blah.
Wrong billionaire.
Yeah, we're hearing almost nothing in terms of side effects or medical concerns on the vaccine. And even when we talk about, the possibility of a little bit of enlarged heart or whatever, we're talking about the percentile of so small, why is the oxygen even coming out of my lungs? So you're talking to LGBT. Just allay fear for us, or tell us that we should be concerned about it in terms of thinking in the next 6 months of having vaccine to continue to manage where we are in COVID. What are your thoughts about that?
Al, I think you're absolutely right. There have been no significant, side effects. What you're talking about with the mild and transitory myocarditis in young men is a tiny percentage. And otherwise, we really haven't heard anything. But people aren't being convinced by facts. They're being convinced by disinformation campaigns on the part of politicians, on the part of news networks like One America and Fox News, that have a monetary gain from passing disinformation to people. When you look at the people who run those networks, they've all been vaccinated. They all take whatever precautions they have to take. Fox News is based in Manhattan. They can't get into a restaurant without their vaccine card. So you can be pretty sure that those guys all have vaccine cards. And yet they continue to promote this false narrative to people. And while you and I sit here and say, well, the science shows there's no major side effects, that's not what people are being told. And there's a significant proportion of people who believe it. The same way they say 80% of Republicans believe that Joe Biden didn't legitimately win the election. I mean, when your base is made up of people who are not, who are uneducated, and you have, definitely lower education levels, and you feed them a continuous diet of fear and misinformation, this is what's going to happen.
Right.
And we've let this sneak up on us. We really have. And when the ex governor of Montana reaches out and says, "You guys need to get out of your cities and come to those rural areas," he's absolutely right. That we've allowed the Republicans to sit on these school boards, to destroy our civics education, to destroy our science education. And this is what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm not Tucker Carlson, and we're not Fox News, so we're Queer News Tonight, and that's why I've been in this with you. Thank goodness. That's why I've been in this with you since.
Sometimes I feel guilty for wearing a bow tie.
Right, spring of 2020. We do this every single week. And it has been an ongoing mission for us to educate. We're talking to the LGBTQ community. We listen to science and health, and that's why we're overwhelmingly in the 90th percentile, and will continue to report. We are certainly saddened that 56,000 LGBTQ Americans have been lost in this pandemic. But Dr. Howard Grossman is going to be with us every week to help continue to guide us through and tell us the moment that we need to get the next whatever it is that we need to get. That is this evening.
Congratulations on your network.
Yes, it's very exciting news. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure they're going to need a health show. Just saying, on broadcast television for LGBT. Well, that is this evening's Queer News Tonight's Q&A on LGBTQ plus health and pandemic. We're here, as I said, every Tuesday with Dr. Howard Grossman to answer your questions. I'm looking forward to a day where we don't have to talk about COVID-19 and we talk about the other medical problems that Chris and John and David have, which I'm sure there are oodles and noodles.
Can you call me a CPAC doctor? I'd appreciate it.
CPAC. Right. Dr. Grossman joins us from the prestigious Howard Brown Medical Center in Chicago, the largest LGBTQ plus health resource in the Midwest. And again, as always, thank you, Howard, for being with us at Queer News Tonight.
Good night, all.
Good night.
That is our pandemic news for tonight. Next, we report on our partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church right here in Fort Lauderdale. We're broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine. In supporting that partnership, Happening Out Television Network broadcasts the largest LGBTQ plus religious live broadcast in the world, as more than 30,000 watch every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Watch this.
Hi, I'm Dean Trantalis, the mayor of the city of Fort Lauderdale. They say the gayest place on planet Earth, and Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
Well, we finished tonight's Queer News headlines with what we call LGBTQ plus flash news.
LGBTQ plus flash news number one, pastor relieved of duties by his church after a drag performance on HBO's We're Here. A pastor has been relieved of his pastoral duties by the church he worked for after he donned drag on the HBO series We're Here. Pastor Craig Duke is a proud LGBTQ plus ally. The married father preaches about inclusivity and love for all. In 2018, he took over as lead pastor at Newburgh United Methodist Church in Evansville, Indiana. Last month, he appeared on We're Here after being suggested by the local Evansville Pride organization. The show features drag performers Eureka O'Hare, Shangela, my personal favorite, and Bob the Drag Queen. The trio travels across small American towns, transforming locals into drag queens and highlighting local stories of perseverance and inspiration. At the time, Duke told Religion News Service, quote, "It was an incredibly wonderful, refreshing, deepening, powerful, spiritual experience. I was surrounded and immersed in a culture that I've never been immersed in. And one of the things in ministry, if you want to involve people different than your ministry, you have to go where people are different than you are. The invitation to be part of the show allowed me to do that, end quote. In a statement from a GoFundMe in support of Craig's participation in We're Here, it says, quote, unfortunately, the representation in drag caused much turmoil in the church that he was serving at the time and ultimately led to him being, quote, relieved of pastoral duties at the church. Craig will continue with a significantly reduced salary until no later than February 28th. Obviously, this poses a major challenge to Craig and his family as they determine their next steps, end quote. Okay, so the church didn't fire him, but he didn't resign, and he's not working and is going to be evicted from his home. Yeah, this church, it bends more than a Cirque du Soleil performer.
Well, you know, with all of the religions and their regalia, I think it's perfectly appropriate for priests, ministers, pastors to do drag. God celebrates that.
We're here. Shangela has done shows for me many times. Just a quick shout out. We're down here in Fort Lauderdale in Wilton Manors, and I know this city commissioner in Wilton Manors, and he would be a great story about drag. Just saying.
I appreciate that very much. It was a lot of fun. I actually think in this case, we really need to acknowledge this pastor who I think was doing exactly what a great minister should do. I hope that there is some church someplace that picks him up because he's really doing the right thing in my mind.
Yeah.
Well, the people who complained about him obviously never actually watched the show or completely missed the point of the show. It's such an amazing show. It's one of the best shows about coming out in small communities I've seen. Props to Eureka and Shangela and Bob.
Absolutely. Well, continuing in LGBTQ plus flash news, Ghana seeks to outlaw being gay before it becomes a pandemic. At Queer News Tonight, we have had dozens of stories in 2021 about LGBTQ plus human rights issues in Africa, but Ghana is in a class all to itself. An anti-LGBTQ movement in Ghana has become the world's most serious attack on the LGBTQ plus community, as this week supporters have warned of a pandemic of homosexuality unless the country passes a law making it effectively illegal to be gay. Since early last month, Ghana has been conducting public hearings for a bill that would impose harsher penalties than those already in place for identifying as LGBT or being an ally, and would imprison anybody found guilty of expressing support of the LGBTQ community or civil rights. Same-sex relations are already criminalized in the West African nation, carrying a 3-year prison sentence. But the new law would impose a sentence of 5 years for anyone identifying as LGBT, an ally, or any sexual or gender identity that is contrary to the binary categories of male and female. The bill, which has bipartisan support, would also impose a sentence of up to 10 years for anyone advocating for LGBTQ plus rights. Let me just re-summarize the story that we just told you. This is the most capricious and dangerous law since the pink triangle hunt of the Nazis in World War II. They are suggesting we are penalizing and criminalizing you not for the act of sexual homosexuality, but of being anything that voices support for the LGBTQ community.
Yeah, and make no mistake, there is a line that is a clear path from going to preventing anti-bullying materials being on a website to it steps all the way back to this. These are two connected causes on the same path. So we really have to defend what progress we've made here and frankly advance that progress elsewhere around the world.
Yeah. I mean, I've caught a lot of things from other gay guys, but the homosexuality itself wasn't one of them. And when they talk about a pandemic of homosexuality, I imagine World War Z, but with glitter and wigs and abs and leather. I don't know.
And let's make no mistake about it. The church is one of the driving forces behind this. I don't just say the church, just church in general in that part of the world. We do not need the gospel, according to Ghana. The real pandemic is homophobia.
Right, and this particular pandemic, I will refuse to take a vaccine and go, I'm already infected, so, you know.
I don't know if you know this, but you are a lesbian. You go to prison in Ghana, and you go to prison, and you go to prison. Well, you get it.
And prison is not as fun as it looks in the movies.
No, especially in Ghana.
All right, on that note, let's go to our next LGBTQ plus flash news. Netflix Comedy Festival features Dave Chappelle and then 10 queer and trans comics. Earlier today, Netflix announced a giant new comedy festival featuring over 100 live shows throughout over 25 venues across Los Angeles. Netflix is a Joke, the festival, is described as, quote, a brand new comedy festival that's calling on the biggest names in comedy to descend on LA for 11 days. From absolute legends to hand-picking rising stars, we've stacked this thing with the funniest people who've responded to our DMs, end quote. Netflix makes fun of itself in the hilarious festival name, clearly a nod after Dave Chappelle missteps earlier in the year. Netflix apparently decided to clean up its act. Well, kind of. Chappelle is still performing. We're sure he can't resist causing another LGBTQ plus firestorm. But fire extinguishers are coming to the rescue as more than 10 queer and trans comics will be participating. We're pretty sure they're gonna have a lot to say about Netflix and Chappelle. So it's hosted by Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda, featuring trans comedians including River Butcher, Flame Monroe, Robin Trans, and LGBTQ plus and allies including Sam J, Guy Branum, Joel Kim Booster, Mae Martin, Queer Eye's Jonathan Van Ness, legendary comedian Wanda Sykes, Trixie Mattel, Todd Glass, Bob the Drag Queen, Ellen DeGeneres, Fortune Feimster, Leah Delaria, Patty Harrison, Eddie Izzard, Margaret Cho, Sandra Bernhard, Tig Notaro, and more. Netflix is a Joke, April and May 2022. You know, for me, the one thing I'm happy about here is I've run through every Netflix comedy special. It's going to be exciting to have some new stuff to watch.
I'm actually excited about some of the allies, like Marlon and Damon Wayans, who I love, Mike Myers. But when it comes to the gay performers, I would eat pretty much any item of food out of Mateo Lane's ass.
Oh.
Okay.
All right, so bring your fork. No, my concern about this is that you always put the biggest names at the end. They're called the closers. And I'm just worried that after all this positivity that they're going to put fresh material from Dave Chappelle and just that's going to be, he'll get to have the last word. And that concerns me.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not thinking about that. I just am ready to laugh my ass off. So I'm ready for you, Netflix.
First, I love the title of the special, Netflix. Wow, did you go out on the limb with that call and making fun of yourself? Love that, absolutely. And prediction here, last week in April, first couple of weeks in May, we are probably going to hear the greatest volume of LGBTQ humor, whether you're queer or not queer, because of the Chappelle story. It's going to be front and center worldwide in May. Watch. I bet.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to that. And that is today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ plus evening news show. Is our community important to you?
Then help us by liking and subscribing. Ring the bell for updates. Share this news with your friends and family.
Post this broadcast in the many groups you are a member of. Tonight's stories about our community deserve the attention of your family and friends.
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support.
And if our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world. This is the only place in the world that tells these LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. And that is the passion of the Happening Out Television Network and Queer News Tonight. I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Chris Caputo, David Hopkins, Cindy Brown, and John Hayden. We will see you daily at 8 p.m. Good night.
Peace.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire